you may have seen the bit of humor going around on social media where some people are saying that this year on December 31st, they're going to stay up until midnight, although they normally don't do that at the end of the year. But this year, they want to make sure that the year 2020 actually leaves. They are waiting for an end time. The parables that we had last week and this week are also about people who are waiting for Jesus at the end of time. Last week it was the 10 bridesmaids waiting for the bridegroom, and this week we have the gospel story of the 3 servants who were entrusted with huge amounts of money to invest until their master returned. In both of the parables, there was a delay in the return of the master, and the focus is on what the people did during that delay while they were waiting. The people of Matthew's time, the people for whom he originally wrote the gospel, their church was facing real problems. First, they assumed that Jesus was going to come back quickly. It was now, at the time of the writing of the gospel, 30 years after the ascension, and Jesus had not returned, and they were confused and concerned. What did this delay mean? And so Matthew gives them these 2 parables about how they are supposed to be acting in this time before Jesus comes. They are to use their abilities and invest their talents in the service of the kingdom of God. Those who do that well, as in last Sunday's gospel, will be welcomed into the wedding banquet. And those who use their talents well, as in this Sunday's gospel, will hear their master say, "Come, share your master's joy." A second problem for Matthew's church was what we heard about weeks ago about the wheat and the weeds in the same field. Now in Matthew's church, some were investing their time, their talents, their skills in the service of the Lord, but others were saying, "Oh, nothing's happening," and so they didn't use their God-given gifts. They didn't help the reign of God to develop. Both parables were written for the people of Matthew's time, but Matthew was also writing for everyone who would read his gospel after him. And so the focus of these 2 parables also applies to us today. We are a community of believers, but some of us have not used our gifts and talents fully. We try to work together for the kingdom, and some of our members participate and contribute well, but some don't. Then, though, the message of the 2 parables is that there will come a time when God will require an accounting of the efforts that each of us has made. It's interesting to remember that most of Jesus' life was spent as a carpenter's son. For 30 years, before he began his preaching and teaching and healing, his focus was on his family, his work as a carpenter, and his community. He focused on the small, the ordinary things of life. And then he had only 3 years of his public ministry. What is called this hidden life in Nazareth was ordinary, but really important. In the way he lived those 30 years, Jesus redeemed and glorified everyday events and the ordinary happenings of human life. He showed that every action, even the smallest, is a way of worshiping God and of building up the reign of God here on earth. When we look at today's parable, and it talks about a talent, we really don't know how much money that equates to today. We do know it was a really large sum. But what about our talents? What has God given to us that we are to use wisely? God's gifts to us are numerous. our skills and ability, our health, our material goods, our loving family and friends. These are gifts to be invested and used. But are we like the third servant in today's parable? He was afraid to act. He just took the easy way out. He took no risks. He made no commitment to do God's work. Are there fears or laziness that keeps us from using our talents? We should not allow them to be buried as the third servant buried his talent, but we need to dig up our talents and use them to build up the kingdom of God. Like the early disciples, we too are waiting for Jesus. We have an unknown time to wait. But we must not be distracted from the work of discipleship. Discipleship is not like an examination that we can cram for at the very end, but rather it is our daily living out of Jesus' commandments to love God and to love our neighbor as ourselves.